Foster's Australian Grand Prix with Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Michael Schumacher then 3 times a winner here in the last 4 years. Alongside him, Rubens Barrichello. Behind Schumacher, Juan Pablo Montoya, twice on the podium in the last 2 years. The long winter of waiting is over. 58 laps of the Australian Grand Prix will begin when everybody has formed up on the grid. But for now, turn up your volume buttons and enjoy the sound of 20 Formula One cars throwing themselves down towards the first corner, and the 2004 World Championship begins now! Cracking start by Alonso. Look at Alonso on the grass. He's attacked Montoya, but Montoya's fighting back, and Alonso has to yield. 2 Ferraris, 1 and 2 in the corner. Montoya runs wide. Alonso goes through, and Montoya definitely lost space there, and Jenson Button holds on to his 4th place. But a cracking start by Fernando Alonso.
Yes, indeed. It'd be good to see a replay of that. I'm sure we'll get one shortly, but Montoya in all sorts of trouble down to that first corner. Now he's even behind his teammate Ralf Schumacher back there in 5th or 6th place. Coulthard got away well. Raikkonen had a very poor start, I saw out of the window, and so did Mark Webber, I believe, in the Jaguar, not immediately get away well. He's down to 8th place.
So as they make their way round on the first lap, Michael Schumacher leads from Rubens Barrichello. Alonso is 3rd, Button is 4th, 5th, Jarno Trulli. Another great start for him in the Renault. Ralf Schumacher up to 6th, 7th, Juan Pablo Montoya from 3rd on the grid. Mark Webber is 8th, Sato is 9th, David Coulthard is up to 10th place. That's where his teammate Raikkonen started. Raikkonen dropped down to 13th. Here's his cracking scrap, though, on the track, as you can see, between, that looks like Massa and Raikkonen.
Yes, indeed, Raikkonen trying to make up now. He really, and he tremendously fast under braking for turn 13 there. Raikkonen just bogged down on the lines, looking out of the window, just did not get away at all, and had to sort of relaunch the car away. Schumacher leads from Barrichello, Alonso, Button then safely in 4th. Trulli's done well up there in 5th place. Ralf Schumacher, Juan Pablo Montoya, Mark Webber, Sato, Coulthard 10th.
Yeah, it's not the start at all that Juan Pablo Montoya had in mind. He was talking to you on the grid. Could he live with the red cars? We were asking him, but certainly making life very difficult for himself here in the first Grand Prix by dropping from 3rd down to 7th. And worse news for him, he's got his teammate Ralf Schumacher alongside him. There they are, and Montoya has got past him.
Yep, past him under braking for turn 3, where Ralf Schumacher was so cautious in qualifying and making the team spit a few feathers, because he lost 7/10 under the first 2 braking zones. There are now the 2 McLarens, line astern. At the moment, no way past Sato in 9th for Coulthard. But for me, James, it's very significant that Alonso has made it up into 3rd place and is keeping the Ferraris well in sight. If we're right about that Renault being very good in a longer run under race conditions.
Yes, well, we're talking about the strategy of the races here, typically a 1 or 2 stop race, but they've made the pit lane faster now. The speed limit now 60 miles an hour. It's up from 45 miles an hour last season, and the pit lane itself is shorter, so they're trying to encourage people to make more stops, and certainly the indications are the guys who qualified towards the front are going to make 3 stops here this afternoon, or certainly was carrying a 3-stop fuel load at the start of the race. They can change their strategy as they go along. You might see them running a longer middle stint, but Alonso, we sense, is running perhaps a little bit more fuel than the people around him, and if that's the case, given the way the Renault, as I say, is very gentle on its rear Michelin tyres, he could be sitting in the pound seats here this afternoon, certainly looking good for a podium finish.
Here's a replay of the start. You can see the green Jaguar of Webber 3 back on the left, very slow away, and still those Renaults quick off the line. Whatever they learned under traction and launch control regulations, they've certainly put it into play as well for the driver control systems. Both Renaults flying, and it looks as if Montoya got too much wheel spin, and look at that. Trulli and Alonso already all over him, and now he goes in too deep, locks a wheel onto the grass and loses out badly. There's another angle, and there is Montoya just locking that unloaded inside right front, and you lose so much deceleration. Your front tyres doing most of the braking. You've got about 58% of your braking energy through the front, and you just cannot slow down. He's going okay. He's in relatively clear air. He's doing 26.8, but the Ferraris are doing 24.5 now for Michael Schumacher. 24.5. Incredible pace.
It is, although you have to say, Martin, that there are a couple of queues being formed here. There's the one behind Jarno Trulli, which contains the two Williams cars. Montoya, we think, is on a slightly different strategy from Jarno Trulli and possibly being held up there. And this is the other problem here. Takuma Sato, although Coulthard not that close to him, Raikkonen you can see, and Massa behind them. But Sato is doing pretty slow lap times in comparison with the men in front of him. And I wonder whether perhaps McLaren do have a bit more pace if they just get themselves in front of Sato.
I don't think David's close enough to be worrying Sato too much, and therefore we have Fisichella in the Sauber. But it's interesting to me that Massa is beginning, who's in 12th, beginning to hustle Raikkonen and Coulthard, just to demonstrate, I think, that the Bridgestones in these heat conditions fast Kimi Raikkonen. There you saw it. He got in the slip. He was quicker off the last corner, got in the slipstream and was faster down the straight. And there's Raikkonen. He's got some problem. It looks like the rear locked up. It looks like the engine died because both his rear tyres suddenly locked, and that is why he got passed down the straight that easily, I think. Just the engine going a bit sick, and then it's blown up and locked up immediately. Nothing you can do about that unless you pull the clutch in immediately. But then as soon as the engine stops, the hydraulic pressure fades away and the clutch re-engages anyway. And that is an engine failure for Kimi Raikkonen.
Yes, you can see the smoke pouring out of the airbox. And I think the body language of Kimi Raikkonen says it all, as does the body language of Ron Dennis we saw there up on the pit wall. This, I'm sorry to say, is no great surprise. McLaren having to run the car, the engine, a very low regime in order to make it last. And you can see that's how Massa cut through. He almost didn't make the pass stick. Raikkonen tried to get back round the outside, and then you could see that Raikkonen's rear wheels lock up, Martin, and that is clearly the engine. They've had real problems with that, haven't they? They've been treating it like a porcelain vase all weekend, just babying it as Montoya dives into the pits.
Yes, they must have dropped it then because that one's broken. So Montoya then pitting. The leaders are on lap 11, and that for me is a great surprise. We thought Williams might be running more fuel than probably anybody else, given that we were expecting such an electric pace from them. And they weren't that hot in qualifying, and therefore we hoped they were going to go further. But Montoya then, the second man to pit. Yellow flags are out because of Raikkonen's stranded car there.
But I do wonder, he was in that queue behind Trulli, and I just do wonder, they must have realised that Trulli was perhaps carrying more fuel and he was on a hiding to nothing. I think they've rolled the dice here.